I can't see the cord's day. More suction now.
Pressure's dropping. He's crashing.
Nurse Bro, stay back and let us work.
Give me the head of the bed. Now. He's got a tension building on the left. Decompress it, or the tube won't matter.
How do you grade? Now.
Doctor. Hang in there. Ravenwood. 4-1. Friendly inside the wire. There you are. Stay with me.
The monitors were screaming, and no one in the room could make them stop. The pilot on the table was drowning on dry land, blood in the airway, a lung folding in on itself, oxygen numbers falling in green digits toward a value that meant a boy would not go home. 2 doctors had their hands full and their faces gray. The clock on the wall had no second hand, so no one could count the seconds they were losing. And into that noise walked the quietest nurse in Washington, the one they called boring, the one who charted in tidy rows and never raised her voice. And she did something with her hands that none of them had ever been trained to do. She leaned close to a dying stranger and murmured 2 words no civilian should have known. One man in the waiting room was about to find out exactly who she was. They called her the calmest nurse in the building, and they did not mean it as a compliment. Amelia Hayes had worked the night shift at that Level 1 trauma center for 6 years, and in 6 years, she had never once been the story. She restocked the crash cart before anyone asked. Hers was the handwriting the residents could actually read. When the young doctors clustered at the nurses' station telling war stories about the wild saves and the impossible codes, Amelia listened and refilled the coffee and said very little. She wore sea glass green scrubs washed soft as river stones. She kept her hair pinned back plain. She moved through a screaming room without seeming to hurry, and people took that for dullness, because they had never learned that the truly steady hands belong to people who have already survived the worst thing they will ever see. That was the part no one knew. That was the part she had spent 6 years not saying. The younger nurses liked her well enough, the way you like a piece of good furniture. Reliable. There, Marta, who was 26 and still cried in the supply closet after the bad ones, once asked Amelia how she stayed so calm. Amelia had folded a blanket into a perfect square and said, "I used to have a job where calm was the whole job." Doing what? Charting, Amelia said, and smiled, and the subject closed like a door. It was a Tuesday in October, near 2 in the morning, when the radio at the desk crackled with the flat voice of a flight medic. Amelia was standing near it, holding a paper cup of tea gone cold, and she did not know yet that the next 90 minutes would take the careful little life she had built and hold it up to the light. "Inbound to your trauma bay, ETA 4 minutes, the radio said. "Adult male, ejection injury, aircraft down in the Chesapeake training range. Blunt chest, airway compromise. We are losing his SATs. He's fighting us." Ejection, aircraft, training range. Amelia set the cup down very slowly, the way you set down something you do not trust your hand to hold. The doors banged open 4 minutes later, and they brought him in on a rush of cold air and shouting. He was young, 30 maybe, with a face swelling purple down one side and a flight suit cut open to the waist. His chest wasn't rising right. One side lifted, the other dragged and sank, a terrible seesaw that told Amelia everything before a single machine did. Blood at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were open and wild and drowning in panic, hunting the ceiling lights for something to hold on to. The trauma team swarmed. Dr. Prasad at the head of the bed, calling for a tube. Dr. Whitfield working the chest. Marta trying to hang a line and missing the vein because her hands were shaking. "He's clamping down," Prasad said, jaw tight. "I can't see the cords. There's too much blood. Suction, more suction. Pressure's dropping," someone called. "BP's crashing." The pilot bucked against them. His hand shot out, caught Prasad's sleeve, and he tried to speak around the blood and the fear and no words came, only a wet and rattling sound that made two of the residents step back. And Amelia, who had been reaching for the suction, went still. She had heard that sound before. Not in this building, not in this life. In another country, under a different colored sky, with the roar of rotors overhead and sand in her teeth. She knew that sound the way you know your own name called across a dark room. It was the sound of a man about to give up, not because his body has quit, but because his mind has decided he is alone. She did not decide to move. Her body decided for her. "Give me the head of the bed," Amelia said. The room did not stop, exactly. But something in her voice cut through it. Not loud, never loud, but flat and level and absolutely certain. A voice that had clearly said hard things in worse places and expected to be obeyed. Prasad looked up, startled, and for reasons he could not have explained afterward, he stepped aside. What Amelia did next, no one in that room fully understood while it was happening. Her hands moved without hunting. She reset the angle of his jaw with 2 fingers, opened a path where there had only been a closing throat, and read the ruined chest not with her eyes but with the flat of her palm laid against it, feeling for the place where the air was going wrong. She did not reach for the chart. She did not wait for the numbers. She worked from something older than any of the equipment in the room, a knowledge sunk so deep into her hands that 6 years of quiet charting had not worn it away. "He's got a tension building on the left," she said. "It's pushing everything over. You decompress that, or the tube won't matter. Now, not in a minute, now." Whitfield stared at her. "How do you—" "Now, doctor." He did it, and the change was immediate and impossible. The pilot's chest suddenly finding its rhythm, the terrible seesaw evening out, the green numbers on the monitor stopping their fall and beginning, grudgingly, to climb. But the man was still fighting, still panicking, still bucking against the hands trying to save him, and a patient who fights that hard can undo everything in a single thrashing second. Prasad was calling for something to sedate him. Amelia knew there was no time to wait for it to work. So she did the thing that would change all of it. She leaned down close to the pilot's ear, close enough that her lips nearly touched his skin, and in a voice gone suddenly soft, a completely different voice, a nurse's voice, warm where the other had been iron, she murmured something, just under the noise, just for him. The team caught only fragments, 2 words that sounded like nonsense, a short string of numbers, a phrase with the shape of a name that was not a name, and the pilot stopped fighting. His whole body went loose, not unconscious, his eyes were still open, but the panic drained out of him all at once, and his gaze found her face and locked on it with something that was almost recognition, almost peace. His lips moved. He tried to answer her, and whatever he was trying to say, he could not, because there was a tube going down now, and Prasad was securing it, and the moment folded back into the ordinary chaos of a life being saved. But he had heard her. Whatever she said had reached him in a place the drugs could not, and he had chosen, in the middle of drowning, to trust the woman leaning over him. And she had chosen to give him the one thing that could reach a man like that. A password, a door, proof, whispered in the dark, that he was not alone in a country he had thought was empty. 40 minutes later, the pilot was stable, tubed, and on his way to surgery, and the trauma bay looked like a battlefield the tide had gone out on. Gauze on the floor, empty vials, the propped door letting in the cold. Marta was crying again, quietly, from relief this time. Prasad sat on a rolling stool with his gloves still on and his hands hanging between his knees, and he looked at Amelia across the wreck of the room with an expression she had spent 6 years hoping never to see on anyone's face. "Where," he said slowly, "did you learn to do that?" Amelia peeled off her gloves. Her hands, she noticed, were perfectly steady. They always were. "Charting," she said, and she went to restock the crash cart, because it was empty now, and someone had to. She thought that would be the end of it. She was wrong, because of a man in the waiting room who had been watching through the glass, and who had not been watching the pilot at all. His name was Colonel Daniel Reeves, and he had come to that hospital at 1 in the morning for a reason that had nothing to do with the woman in green scrubs. He was an intelligence officer, 22 years in, and the aircraft that had gone into the Chesapeake was carrying a young officer whose safe return was, for reasons above the pay grade of everyone in that building, Reeves's personal responsibility. He had driven 90 minutes through the dark with a knot in his stomach and a folder on the passenger seat, and he had planted himself in the waiting room with the stillness of a man who had learned long ago that waiting was most of the job. He wore a civilian coat over a bearing that no coat could hide. His posture was straight even at that hour, and on the ring finger of his left hand he still wore a wedding band, though the woman it belonged to had been gone 4 years, because taking it off had never once felt like something he could survive. Reeves had watched a great deal of trauma through a great deal of glass in his career. He knew what a good team looked like. He knew, too, what it looked like when something extraordinary happened in a room, and he had felt the shift the moment the quiet nurse stepped up to the head of that bed. He had not been able to hear her, but he had read her. He had watched her hands. He had watched her give orders to doctors twice her rank in that building without any rank of her own. He had watched her lean down to a panicking pilot and say something short, and he had watched a drowning man go still, not sedated still. He knew the difference. He had seen both. But the specific stillness of a soldier who has just been told a friendly is inside the wire. He had seen that exact stillness before, on other faces. In other rooms he was not allowed to describe. And then he had seen the pilot's mouth move in answer. And Reeves, who had spent 2 decades learning to read lips across dark distances, caught 2 words the pilot mouthed back at her before the tube went in. The pilot had set a call sign, and it had not been his own. Reeves sat very still in the plastic chair for a long moment. Then he took out the folder he had brought, and he did not open it. He simply held it, and he looked through the glass at a woman restocking a cart as if nothing at all had happened, and he thought, I know that word. I know where that word comes from, and there are only a handful of people alive who would have said it back to a drowning man to bring him home. He should have been relieved. His officer was stable. His job, in the narrowest sense, was done. Instead, he felt the ground move under 22 years of certainty, because a story he had been told was finished had just walked past him in soft green scrubs, carrying an empty tray. He went to the desk. He was careful. He had spent a lifetime being careful. The nurse who worked the trauma, he said to the charge nurse, keeping his voice easy. The one at the head of the bed. I'd like to thank her. The patient's family will want a name. The charge nurse smiled, tired and proud. That's Amelia. Amelia Hayes. She's been with us years. Bit of a legend on nights, though she'd hate me saying so. Never makes a fuss, that one. You could set your watch by her. How long has she worked here? 6 years, I think. Came to us from, I'm not even sure. She never says much about before. The charge nurse laughed. Honestly, we always figured she'd done something dull. Insurance work, maybe. She's so calm. Reeves thanked her and stepped away, and inside him something had gone very quiet and very awake at once. 6 years. Never says much about before. Dull. Calm. He knew what calm like that cost. He knew exactly what it cost, and he knew that people did not pay that price working in insurance. He went back to his chair. He waited until the ward had settled into its deep night hush, until the propped door had been closed and the lights dimmed to the low amber of the small hours. And he did something he was not, strictly, permitted to do. He made a call. He stepped into the cold stairwell and dialed a number that connected to a desk that did not appear in any public directory, and when a flat voice answered, he gave a phrase and a code, and then he said, I need you to run a name against a legacy roster. Restricted unit, medical, I'll wait. He gave the name, Amelia Hayes. He gave the call sign the pilot had mouthed, and then he leaned his shoulder against the cinder block wall and closed his eyes, and while the machinery on the other end went to work, he let himself remember. He remembered a briefing, years back, in a room with no windows, a slide with a redacted service record, a photograph blacked out, a commanding officer saying, in the careful language of people who spend their lives not saying things, The medic on that team was the reason 4 men came home. We are not going to talk about how. We are not going to talk about where. When this is over, that person is going to walk away and become nobody, and we are going to let them, because that is the deal we make with the ones who do the work that never gets a ribbon. The ones who serve in the shadow, his old commander had said, do not get to be thanked. That is the price. That is the whole price. Reeves had been a young man then. He had nodded, the way you nod at things you do not yet understand, you will carry for the rest of your life. The voice came back on the line. It was quieter now, careful in a way that told Reeves the answer before the words did. Colonel, it said, where are you getting this name? That's not your question to ask. A pause. I can't confirm a legacy record over this line. You just did, Reeves said softly. By not confirming it, you just did. I've done this longer than you've been alive. Another pause, longer. Then the voice, lower still. Then you already know, I can't tell you what she did. I can tell you she is real. I can tell you the file exists, and that most of it is black. And I can tell you, off any record that will ever exist, that if half of what's in there is true, that woman should not be alive, and neither should the men she carried out. A breath. How is she? Reeves looked through the small wired window in the stairwell door, down the dim hallway, to where a woman in green scrubs was refilling a coffee pot for the residents who would never know what she was. She's fine, Reeves said. She's restocking a cart. He hung up. And he stood in that cold stairwell a long time, an intelligence officer who had built a career on knowing more than the people around him, and for the first time in years he felt not powerful but humbled, because the most extraordinary person in that entire hospital had spent 6 years making absolutely certain no one would ever find out. These stories take a long time to write, and I only ask one small thing before we go on. If the quiet ones in your own life have ever mattered to you, stay with this to the end. It gets where it's going. What kept Reeves in that hospital until dawn, folder unopened in his lap, was the thing the confirmation had done to his understanding of the deal. Because there was a side the briefings never mentioned. When someone like Amelia disappears into an ordinary life, the disappearing is not free. It is not a peaceful retirement. It is a kind of exile, chosen and permanent, in which a person carries the heaviest things a human being can carry into a world that has agreed never to ask about them. She had saved that pilot tonight with hands that remembered other nights, other men, and she would go home in the morning and no one would ever say the word thank you, because the whole architecture of what she'd done was built on the promise that no one ever would. And Reeves knew the weight that came with what he'd just learned. If he pulled that thread, if he reported what he had seen, if he formally identified her, the machinery might reach out and pull her back in. A recognition like this could end her quiet life, whether she wanted it ended or not. He should file the report. That was the rule. That was the whole of his career, following the rule. He sat with the folder in his lap, and he watched the sky outside the waiting room windows go from black to the deep, bruised blue that comes before any light, and he did not open the folder, and he did not make the call. Amelia found him at 4 in the morning. She had not gone looking for him. She had come to the waiting room to tell a family that a patient was out of surgery and stable, and the family had gone, and there was only one man left, sitting very straight in a plastic chair with a coat too good for the room and a folder he was not reading. She knew what he was before he said a word. She had known it the moment she saw his posture. You did not spend the years she had spent among such men and fail to recognize one at rest. She could have walked away. She thought about it. Her whole careful life told her to walk away. Instead, she sat down 2 chairs from him because she was tired and because some part of her had been waiting 6 years for someone to finally sit in that chair, even as the rest of her had prayed no one ever would. "Long night," she said. "Yes," Reeves said. They sat in the silence of 2 people who both knew how to use it. Outside, a delivery truck reversed somewhere with a distant beeping. The coffee machine hissed. Reeves turned the folder over once in his hands and set it down on the chair between them, face down, and left it there. "He's going to make it," Amelia said. "Your pilot, if that's why you're here." "That's why I came," Reeves said. "It isn't why I'm still here." She looked at him then, really looked, and he looked back, and neither of them pretended. "I saw what you did in there," he said quietly. "I couldn't hear it, but I saw him stop fighting. I saw what you said to him, and I saw what he said back to you." He let that sit. "I've spent 22 years learning to read men's mouths across dark rooms, Ms. Hayes. He gave you a call sign, and it wasn't his." Amelia said nothing. Her hands were folded in her lap, steady as they always were, and she looked down at them as if they belonged to someone she used to know. "You don't have to tell me anything," Reeves went on, and his voice had gone gentle, careful, the voice of a man diffusing something. "I want you to understand that I made one call tonight. I'll make no others. What I know, I'll keep. But I couldn't leave without." He stopped. He was a man who always knew the next word, and he had run out of them. "Without what?" Amelia said. "Not unkind, just quiet." Reeves turned the wedding band on his finger, a small, unconscious thing, and when he spoke again, it came out lower than he meant it to. "My wife was a nurse," he said. Not your kind of nurse. A regular one, a good one, the kind who held hands. She used to tell me I was married to a job I couldn't describe, married to a wife I couldn't discuss, and that one day I'd wake up and realize I'd spent my whole life keeping secrets and had none of my own left worth telling." He breathed. "She died 4 years ago, and I never once told her the thing I'm about to tell you, because I never let myself understand it until I watched you tonight." Amelia sat very still. "I've spent my whole career," Reeves said, "sending people into the dark and telling them that the price of what they do is that no one will ever know. I said it like it was noble. I believed it was noble. And then tonight I watched a woman save a boy's life with her bare hands, and I watched an entire room decide she must be dull because she was calm, and I understood for the first time what I've actually been asking of people. I've been asking them to be forgotten while they're still standing right in front of me. I've been calling that honor." His jaw worked. "It isn't honor. It's just lonely. It's the loneliest thing there is, and I made a career of arranging it for other people. And I couldn't do a single thing about my own wife dying, knowing I'd never really let her see me." The waiting room was very quiet. Somewhere down the hall a monitor chimed and was silenced. Amelia was looking at him now with an expression that had cracked open, just slightly, at the edges. 6 years of stillness, and something moved behind it. "You want to know if it's true," she said. "No," Reeves said. "I know it's true. I confirmed it in a stairwell an hour ago, God help me, and I shouldn't have, and I'll carry that." He shook his head slowly. "I don't want confirmation, Ms. Hayes. I have all the confirmation a man could stand. I came over here for one reason, and it's a reason I've never once been able to give to any of the people I sent out, because the rules never let me, and my wife died before I understood I even needed to." He turned toward her fully then, this straight-backed man with a dead woman's ring on his hand, and his voice broke on the smallest word in the language. "Thank you," he said. "That's all. That's the whole thing I came to say. For the men you carried that I'll never be allowed to name. For the boy in that bed tonight. For 6 years of letting everyone here think you were nobody so that you could keep saving them anyway." His eyes were wet and he did not look away from her. And it cost him, and he let it cost him. Somebody should have said it a long time ago. "I'm sorry it took a stranger. Thank you." For a moment, Amelia Hayes did not move at all. And then the calmest nurse in Washington put her hands over her face, and her shoulders shook, once, twice, silent and helpless. She cried the way people cry who almost never do, briefly, fiercely, with a kind of shame at being caught, and then without it. Reeves did not touch her. He knew better. He simply sat with her, 2 chairs away, in the amber light, keeping the silence she had taught a whole hospital to mistake for dullness, until she was done. When she took her hands away, her face was wet, but her voice, when it came, was level again. "There were 4 of them," she said, looking straight ahead at nothing. "The men. That's the number in the black part of your file. if it says any number at all. 4. I got them out. Not all in one piece. Not all the way. One of them. She swallowed. The call sign your pilot gave me tonight. I didn't teach it to him. He wouldn't know it. But it belonged to one of my 4. And when a man is drowning on a table and I've got no way to tell him he's safe, that's the door I know how to open. You tell a frightened soldier a friendly's inside the wire, and something in him lets go, and he lives long enough for the rest of us to do our jobs. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Almost not. I've been that door 6 years, and nobody ever knew there was anything on the other side of it. I know now, Reeves said. Yes, Amelia said. You do. And she turned and looked at him, and there was something almost like relief in it, and something almost like grief, and underneath both of those, a thing that had not been on her face when she walked into that waiting room. She looked, for the first time in 6 years, like a person who had been found. The sky outside had gone from bruised to gray to the first thin gold of a morning that did not know or care what had happened in the dark. The pilot woke fully 2 days later. He was young, and he was going to be all right, though he would fly a desk for a while and grumble about it. And he remembered almost nothing of the night they brought him in. He remembered the cold water. He remembered the panic, the drowning, the certainty that he was alone. And he remembered, he told the physical therapist this, frowning, unable to explain it. A woman's voice, close to his ear, saying a word he knew from somewhere he couldn't place, telling him he was safe, telling him a friendly was inside the wire. He said he had believed her instantly and completely. He said he'd stopped being afraid. He asked who she was. The therapist checked and told him a nurse named Amelia Hayes had worked his trauma, and the pilot said the name to himself twice and shook his head, because it meant nothing to him and everything to him, both at once. He asked to thank her. She was not on the schedule the day he was well enough to walk down to the nurse's station. She had traded a shift. It was not an accident. She had heard he wanted to thank her, and she had found, to her own surprise, that she did not need it. Not from him, not that way. Reeves had already given her the one that reached all the way down, the one from someone who actually understood the size of the thing. The boy's gratitude she wanted to leave clean and simple and free of the weight she carried. Let him think a calm nurse had said kind words. Let him keep the door and never see the room behind it. That was the gift. Colonel Reeves came back once more, a week later, on a quiet afternoon. He did not bring the folder. He had shredded it himself, though he would never tell her that. He filed a report on the incident that was accurate in every particular except the ones that mattered. And in the box that asked for any noteworthy details about the treating staff, he wrote, in his careful hand, nothing to report. And he signed his name to that small lie with a steadier conscience than he had felt in 22 years. He found her on a break, sitting on a bench in the little concrete courtyard where the staff went to breathe. October had gone colder. She had a paper cup of tea and a coat over her scrubs, and she made room on the bench without being asked, and he sat. "He's going home Thursday," Reeves said. "Your pilot." "Good," said Amelia. "He wanted to thank you." "I know." She turned the cup in her hands. "I let him not." Reeves nodded slowly. He understood that too. He was, it turned out, one of the very few people alive who could. They sat for a while in the cold. A pigeon walked the length of the low wall. Somewhere an ambulance came and went without urgency. And Reeves, who had spent his life among people trained never to say the true thing, found that he wanted, just once more, to say a true thing out loud. "I've been thinking about what people like you are," he said. "All these years I told them the price of the work was that no one would ever know, and I had it backwards. That's not the price. That's not what it costs you." "Then what does it cost?" Amelia said quietly. She was not challenging him. She wanted, after 6 years, to hear someone else say it. "You learn to save people who will never be able to save you back," Reeves said. He looked out over the gray courtyard. "You learn to be the door and never once ask to be let through it yourself." Amelia was quiet a moment. She watched the pigeon lift off the wall. "And you get so good at it," she said, "that a whole building full of good people can look right at you and see nothing at all." "Yes," Reeves said. He turned to her. That part I only understood tonight, from you. He shook his head slowly. The ones who serve in the shadow. I used to say that like it was a medal. It isn't a medal, it's just the dark, and the willingness to stand in it so somebody else gets the light. And the least the rest of us can do, the very least, is to know it's happening. Even if we can never say so, even if all we can do is sit on a cold bench and know. Amelia was quiet a long moment. That's the most anyone's ever gotten it right, she said finally, in 6 years. She looked at him, and there was warmth in it now, the plain, unguarded warmth she never showed on the ward. You didn't have to come back. No, Reeves said, I didn't. Why did you? He turned the wedding band on his finger, and this time he did not seem to be hiding from it. Because my wife was right, he said. A man can spend his whole life keeping secrets and wake up with none of his own worth telling. I don't have many people left I can be honest with, Ms. Hayes. Turns out you're one of about 4 in the world. He almost smiled. And I understand there's something appropriate about that number. And Amelia Hayes, the calmest nurse in Washington, the boring one, the reliable one, the woman with the steadiest hands anyone had ever seen, and a life so quiet it looked from the outside like nothing at all, laughed. Really laughed, low and surprised, a sound the ward had never heard, a sound that had been folded up small and put away for 6 years, and was only now, on a cold bench beside the one person who understood, allowed to come out. She would go back inside in 10 minutes. She would restock the crash cart, because it needed doing and no one else remembered. She would chart in her tidy rows. She would let them go on thinking she was dull, because the disguise had a purpose and she wore it with pride. And now, for the first time, she wore it lightly. That was the thing about her, the thing none of them would ever see. Because somewhere out there a young man was going home who did not know he owed her his life. And somewhere in this building was a folder that no longer existed. And on a cold bench one time, a good man had looked at the whole of her and said the 2 words she had spent a lifetime making sure no one would ever get the chance to say. That was enough. That was, it turned out, more than enough. Some of the bravest people you will ever pass have decided you should never know. They are steady when you are shaking, calm when the room is screaming, and they let you think they are ordinary while they carry something you will never be shown. If you are ever lucky enough to recognize one, find a way, however small, to let them know that you saw. These stories are made with love, from the quiet corners of lives that history forgot to write down. If this one stayed with you, if you found yourself thinking of someone steady, someone overlooked, someone who was stronger than you ever let yourself notice, then subscribe and stay a while, and let me tell you another. That is all I ask.